Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 139. Events backfiring. Their surroundings were pitch black, and Hung Jun was completely caught off guard as he fell into a pool of water. "I don't know how to swim," Hung Jun gasped out anxiously as his entire body was immersed in the pool. Li Jinglong's strong arms, however, were holding onto him tightly, and with a kick, he swam them towards the shore. In the darkness, from all around them came the wails of the Qiao. The water flowed all around them, and in the air above, and Li Jinglong immediately realized that this was the dragon melting pool that Qiu Yangxi had spoken of. The spell on the landscape brush vanished. When the Jiao horde in the abyss realized that they had been tricked, they grew infuriated, but they didn't dare to get close to the dragon melting pool. There was a small commotion, and they actually began to rip and tear at each other in the air, their blood splattering down. Li Jinglong held onto Hung Jun's arm tightly and put one hand over his mouth as the two of them hunched over, creeping noiselessly along the shore of the pool as they snuck away. Their surroundings were dim and murky. Hung Jun handed the landscape brush to Li Jinglong, who stowed it away in his robes. After they left here, they would return it to Qiu Yangxi. When their eyes grew accustomed to the lighting, they found that where they were wasn't completely dark after all. "What is this place?" Hung Jun asked. "I thought that it would be full of rocks." Within the darkness of the abyss, weak light faded in and out. Under the weak light appeared a ruined battlefield. This battlefield was vast and expansive, and long spear hafts stuck out of the ground scattered with arrows and longbows, as well as rusted swords. Li Jinglong picked up a sword. That sword was already impossibly rusty, to the point where a single flick would snap it. "It's the remains of a battlefield," Li Jinglong said in reply. "Who would have fought here in Hangzhou?" Hung Jun asked curiously. "I imagine this must have been transported in here via some magic," Li Jinglong said. "Have you noticed? The teleportation array here is very similar to the one that Xiaoyu used before." Hung Jun picked up a large arrow, studying the tip of it. Li Jinglong explained, this was an arrow used to shoot down Xiao. Hung Jun understood now. From the looks of it, this could have been the remains of a battlefield where humans had fought against a Jiao horde. There was a glow in the distance, so Li Jinglong started to lead Hung Jun towards where the light was coming from. Gradually, a large earth vein glowing with blue light appeared beneath their feet. "An earth vein!" Hung Jun exclaimed. In Luoyang, they had seen where the earth veins had run. This earth vein was currently reaching out in all directions, much like blood vessels. Li Jinglong cautioned, "Be careful not to step on it." The power of the earth vein was growing denser and denser, and when they arrived in a relatively brighter location, a sacrificial altar appeared in the distance. The two of them stopped in their tracks, looking at that altar. That was a huge doorway held up by stone pillars, which stood tall in this desolate corner of the abyss. Within the doorway were a veritable forest of ancient weapons carved out of stone: sabers, swords, axes, halberds, spears. They were all clustered around the altar in the center. With only a single glance, Li Jinglong said, "Not here. Look into the distance." In the distance there was a very dim pillar of light, that was probably the array that led from the abyss up to the very top of the tower. But for some reason, Hung Jun kept feeling that there was something a bit odd about this place. He took up a spot on the other side of the altar, saying, "Wait a moment, Jinglong. Li Jinglong. Come over here and take a look." Hung Jun gestured for him to come over, so Li Jinglong walked over so the two of them stood shoulder to shoulder. "Doesn't this look like that, from Derenge's diary?" "The door." Li Jinglong finished his sentence for him. That stone door was exactly that symbol that they had seen before, and the carven stone weapons standing in front of the door were the lines within the doorway. Li Jinglong strode forward swiftly, studying the altar. The altar was already covered with dust, so Hung Jun used his hand to wipe the dust away. On the altar were carved 6 symbols. Aside from the eye, slope, moon, and river that they had studied, there was also a round circle, with odd flowing lines of water inside. Li Jinglong. Hung Jun. So that's where the symbols came from, Hung Jun murmured to himself. But who could have carved them here? Li Jinglong pointed out, compared to that, what I'm more concerned about is, where's the artifact? Hung Jun. There was a crack running through the center of the altar, as if something had once been stabbed into it. There were clear signs that whatever had been stabbed into the altar had been pulled out recently. Someone came by not long ago and took it away, Li Jinglong said. Want to guess who that was? Hung Jun was greatly taken aback by that. Xiaoyu. In the blink of an eye, a thought suddenly flashed through Hung Jun's mind, and he immediately froze. Li Jinglong pondered this for a moment, before smiling bitterly. Say, would you consider this good news or bad news? One of the 6 artifacts is in Xiaoyu's hands. No, Hung Jun remembered that when he, Xianming, and Qiu Yangxi had left the second level, in that instant he had very clearly seen a beam of weak light down in the abyss. I know where it is. Hung Jun said. Let's go. He took Li Jinglong's hand, running towards the light pillar in the distance. His heart was beating so fast it almost burst from his chest. If he had guessed correctly, what he had seen on the back of the dragon must have been an artifact hidden in the abyss. As they dashed along, Li Jinglong also understood. You think that the reason Xiaoyu destroyed the array here was because? Hung Jun replied, it's not a guess, I saw it with my own 2 eyes. The 2 of them came to a stop in front of a small sandbank. The pool in the middle of the sandbank was filled with the water from the dragon melting pool, and in the dark sky above, the Jiao horde was keeping far away from this place. Hung Jun rolled up his pant legs, and he and Li Jinglong waded through the water barefoot. In the middle of that pool was a huge, flat pit. A vast array had been carved out in the pit, and the array was just as Qiu Yangxi had described it. It was split into 2, an inner and an outer ring, whose positions had been swapped. They could faintly see that the flow of energy in the array was being blocked, and the symbols in the array were connected up to the earth vein, which served as a power source. The symbols flashed from time to time. And to one side of the array, a thick, curved magical artifact had been embedded. The flow of energy around that point had been twisted, and the array was very unstable. Evidently, Xiaoyu had used this artifact to destroy a part of the array, thus allowing him to change the positions of the inner and outer rings. Xiaoyu had then left the artifact here. The Yao binding cord. Li Jinglong exclaimed. The 2 of them paid no heed to the artifact, instead hurriedly leaping down. Hung Jun reached out to grab it, but Li Jinglong barred him from doing so. Wait a second. The Yao binding cord looked as if it had been forged out of metal, and it was embedded into the ground. It had already melded together with the earth vein array, and the energy around it whipped around wildly. It was much more ferocious than the earth vein in Luoyang had been, and as soon as they got close, it crackled with lightning that shot towards the 2 of them. You can do it, Hung Jun said, cheering Li Jinglong on. Come on. Li Jinglong started to grow nervous. I don't know. Duke De didn't mention how this artifact was supposed to be retrieved. The Sword of Wisdom already recognizes you as its owner, Hung Jun said. Go forth. Li Jinglong settled his nerves, and he met Hung Jun's gaze. Hung Jun nodded at him. Li Jinglong walked forward. The pentacolor sacred light appeared in Hung Jun's hand, preparing at any moment to help Li Jinglong fend off the attacks from the earth vein. Li Jinglong thought deeply for a moment, before he sucked in a breath and knelt down on the ground with one knee, his right hand reaching out towards the Yao binding rope in the rock. This junior ant reads Akalanatha, to bestow this artifact upon me, Li Jinglong said solemnly, before reaching out a hand and pressing it against the Yao binding rope. In that instant, the energy of the earth vein lashed out wildly, traveling up along Li Jinglong's hand throughout his entire body. Li Jinglong let out a wild bellow, and as if his soul had left his body, the blue, glowing form of his spirit started to form behind him. Hung Jun shouted, "Jinglong! Hang in there!" Lightning crackled around Li Jinglong's body, and his entire body turned ethereal. He gritted his teeth as he tugged away at the Yao binding cord, but no matter what, he could not get it to budge. He tugged hard once again, but the Yao binding cord glowed with a golden light, and he was sent flying backwards. Hung Jun hurriedly went forward and grabbed Li Jinglong, and the two of them fell onto the ground. Li Jinglong's hand could not stop trembling, and he gasped for breath, his eyes filled with horror. How could it be like this? Hung Jun asked in disbelief. "Let me try again," Li Jinglong murmured, but Hung Jun hurried to stop him. "Wait. Don't." The Yao binding cord's rejection of Li Jinglong was completely unexpected, but he had no way to just accept it. He leapt forward, grabbing the Yao binding cord tightly. "Give it to me, ba," Li Jinglong said, gritting his teeth. "What is the meaning of this? Let go!" Hung Jun shouted. The sacred flames of the earth vein were burning away Li Jinglong's vitality, and if he continued like this, he would be in danger. The Yao binding cord sent out another pulse, and the golden light sent Li Jinglong back. Li Jinglong landed solidly on the ground, and he sank into a thoughtful silence. "Hung Jun." Li Jinglong panted for a moment, before turning to look at that Hung Jun. That gaze was something that Hung Jun was seeing for the very first time. "It won't recognize me as its owner," Li Jinglong said. "Hung Jun, no, that's impossible. It must be because of the earth vein." But Li Jinglong said decisively, "This artifact of Akalanatha, it doesn't recognize me." Hung Jun frowned. How could that be? Think about it, where could things have gone wrong? Li Jinglong was silent for a long time, before he said, "There's no need to think about it. The sword of wisdom is the same. It has never treated me as its owner, and to me, it has only ever been a normal weapon." "What?" Hung Jun could not believe it. Li Jinglong looked towards Hung Jun, his gaze lost and helpless. "But you can clearly defeat gods," Hung Jun said. "That was the heart lamp," Li Jinglong explained. "Every time I use the sword of wisdom, I am doing nothing more than pouring the power of the heart lamp into the sword. In reality, when I capture Yao and defeat devils, what I use is the power of the heart lamp. Akalanatha has never actually looked after me." No, Hung Jun said. "This is too impossible. Let me think about it. You've called up the golden armor before." "That was the armor of Dipankara," Li Jinglong said. "If I truly had both the power of the heart lamp and the power of Akalanatha in me, then aside from killing my enemies, the sword of wisdom would also have other uses, but see." Li Jinglong pulled out the sword of wisdom strapped to his back, and he showed it to Hung Jun. Hung Jun remembered that every time, from the nine-tailed heavenly fox to the corpse ghost king and Xiaoyu, every time that they had fought a strong enemy, the sword of wisdom had in fact not been of much use. It had been more effective as a medium through which Li Jinglong conducted the power of the heart lamp. Hung Jun looked at Li Jinglong. What are we supposed to do then?" Li Jinglong spread his hands and shrugged, smiling helplessly and bitterly. Hung Jun had never thought that despite Li Jinglong wielding the sword of wisdom for so long and taking on the position as the leader of the exorcism department, he had never obtained the recognition of Akalanatha, nor did he have the power to activate the artifacts. But when he thought about it, that was true. If he had both the heart lamp and the true power of Akalanatha, Li Jinglong's magic would not be such a paltry amount. This had already completely upended Hung Jun's understanding of the world, but when the two of them turned to face each other again, Hung Jun sensed an unease that Li Jinglong had always carried with him. "You realized it a long time ago," Hung Jun said. Li Jinglong nodded, resigned. "Doesn't this seem a little bit like I'm deceiving both others and myself?" Hung Jun said, "Then, you don't count as a successor of Akalanatha." "Yes," Li Jinglong said. Hung Jun said, but you have the heart lamp. That is something we cannot be mistaken about. Li Jinglong replied, that is true. Hung Jun continued, and that is enough. After all, we can't let one person claim all the unfair advantages in this world now, can we? When Li Jinglong heard these words, he suddenly couldn't resist chuckling. He and Hung Jun sat down on the ground facing each other. Hung Jun suddenly said, actually, I like Dipankara more than I like Akalanatha. You don't have to do this. Li Jinglong was torn between laughing and crying. It's true. Hung Jun protested. He truly did not like Akalanatha. After all, he had almost died a cruel death to those golden flames, and they had left him with a certain fear of the sword of wisdom. Li Jinglong said, but no matter what, we must retrieve it, or we will have no way to repair this array. Let me try again. Li Jinglong sucked in a deep breath, only for Hung Jun to say, let me ba. Li Jinglong tried to stop him, but Hung Jun said, I have the protection of the pentacolor sacred light. I'll pull out the Yao binding cord first, then we can take it back and slowly think about how to deal with it. Li Jinglong was very worried, but Hung Jun added, don't be afraid. If I can't pull it out, I'll let go. And saying this, Hung Jun activated the pentacolor sacred light to protect his body. He reached a hand out towards the earth vein, and with a weng, the energy of the earth vein shot out towards Hung Jun. It splashed harmlessly off the barrier of the sacred light, however, as if it had hit a cover and was sent back towards the ground below. Be careful! Li Jinglong called from one side. Hung Jun first used a finger to poke at the Yao binding cord embedded in the rock. There was no reaction, and he said, it's all right. He then grabbed the Yao binding cord. There was a weng, and golden light shot forth, sending him flying backwards, and he and the Yao binding cord fell backwards. Hung Jun. Li Jinglong hurriedly picked him up. Hung Jun felt that in that moment just now, the meridians of his entire body had been subject to a ferocious assault, and he felt as if they had burst under that assault. I'm giving it to you. Hung Jun struggled to his feet and handed the Yao binding cord to Li Jinglong, who held it woodenly. That's it? Hung Jun asked. Li Jinglong didn't say anything. He simply nodded. Hung Jun asked, do you still want the other 4 artifacts after we get out? After thinking about it for a bit, Li Jinglong was very resigned, and in the end, he said, we'll still have to search for them, as well as the person who would be appropriate for them, so that we can hand off the sword of wisdom and the rest of the artifacts to him. Though Li Jinglong usually acted valiant and brave, when he was dealt such a blow, he found it hard to just bounce back. However, it was in his nature to be open-minded, and no matter how much he resented it, that would not be of any use. What didn't belong to him in the end would not belong to him, and Hung Jun was here comforting him as well, so he gradually got over it a little. He suggested, let's correct the array first. Hung Jun opened up the sheepskin scroll that Chu Yangxi had given them, studying the flow of energy within the array. Li Jinglong seemed to still be a little dazed, and Hung Jun looked up again to glance at him, before smiling. Li Jinglong frowned. I really do feel that things are pretty good as they are, Hung Jun replied. Li Jinglong had no choice but to go along with it. Okay, I get it. If we can't get it, then we can't get it. As long as we live in this world, we'll have to get used to letting things go. And saying this, the two of them walked to the earth vein array, lifting their heads to look up towards the sky. Li Jinglong gestured for Hung Jun to stand in the inner circle, while he himself took up a spot in the outer circle. Let's begin. With that, the two of them lifted their hands and sent their magic out. Li Jinglong's entire body glowed with white light, which linked up with the earth vein. The jade peacock plume hanging at Hung Jun's waist glowed splendidly, and the pentacolor sacred light glimmered like a piece of glazed glass, light shining off it in all directions as it connected up with the energy of the earth vein. Li Jinglong instructed him, notice the direction which I'm turning in. Hung Jun faced the light pillar, watching Li Jinglong outside. Li Jinglong's long hair fluttered in the wind, and filled with the power of the earth vein as he was, he looked like a young, divine general of the heavens filled with majesty. It was also at this moment that a sliver of a thought came to him. Did the artifacts of Akalanatha not wish to recognize him as their owner because he already had the heart lamp in him? This thought left as quickly as it came. A boom came from down near the ground, and the outer array began to revolve. Hong Jun's played his two hands out at his sides and closed his eyes, guiding the power back to its original position. As the inner and outer circles moved, the ferocious power of the array gradually calmed. There were several more huge booms before the entirety of the abyss seemed to shift oddly. On the 9th level, the tower within the tower had already been destroyed. As Chu Yangzi and Ashinakayang stood on that platform, they sensed that the world around them had begun to shift. "They're correcting it," Chu Yangzi said. "In a bit, you have to help me guard the perimeter." Ashinakayang asked, "Where will the attacks come from?" He saw that there was absolutely nothing around them. The Jiao had all run off, and the 9th level was empty. What attacks would there be? "They will come from everywhere. You'll understand in a bit," Chu Yangzi said. "I'm starting now." And with that, Chu Yangzi rose into the air, his hands forming sigils as he began to recite an incantation. His right hand sketched out glowing blue symbol after glowing blue symbol, and as soon as the symbols formed, they began to spread out in every direction. Then there was the roar of a dragon as Yeming's ashes melded together with that dragon hun, revolving through the air around the platform at the top of the tower. The array began to form around Chu Yangzi, and it hummed to life. Ashinakayang, wait, what is this? Chu Yang. Si. Explain this to me clearly. An odd change was happening to the flow of time. The sky above them was breaking open, revealing countless cracks. Light shone forth from the widening cracks, and in the air on the 9th level, countless glowing Jiaohun suddenly shimmered into existence, charging towards the array. Ashinakayang. Ashinakayang called on his magic, summoning the war god Baram. A fiery whip appeared in his hand, and he somersaulted through the air, striking out with the whip. The first hit burned with blazing flames as it came down on the Jiaohun charging towards Chu Yangzi, pure energy clashing with pure energy. That Jiaohun were instantly sent flying. The 9th level was filled with a large number of dead Jiao's hun. Usually, there was no way to deal with them, but when Yeming's Hunpo melded with his ashes, that had changed the rules by which the entire dragon-subduing tower operated, and the souls of the dead began to attack the array, one after the other. With all his might, Ashinakayang protected the magic array. At times, the flow of time instantly grew lightning fast, before slowing to its original speed, then dragging out like molasses. Ashinakayang had no way to tell what speed his fire whip would be in the next moment, and he had no choice but to grit his teeth and bear it. "Can you make it go a little faster?" Ashinakayang shouted. "I'm going as fast as I can." Chu Yangzi shouted back. "Don't shout, I can't lose focus." End chapter. Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 140. The Ungshi Rebellion. Deep in the abyss, Hong Jun and Li Jinglong felt the entire world revolve around them. A mysterious swell of colossal power transferred the array under their feet, as well as the rocks around it, far into the distance. Layer by layer, all of the light pillars in the dragon-subduing tower were shifting. The mountains let out huge booms, and the waves churned and surged. Light and shadow flew on by, and the stars revolved in the sky. Spring, 14th year of the Tianbao era. Morajin and Lu Su left Yuzhu and hurried back to Chang'an, reporting back to the Crown Prince Li Hong with the urgent news of the military situation in Yuzhu. Tai and Turandict headed into the depths of the waterways of Lake Tai and discovered an ancient altar. Within the dragon-subduing tower, Hong Jun looked up at Li Jinglong. "Hong Jun, in a bit, how will we go up?" Li Jinglong replied, I don't know. But Yangtze probably won't focus solely on the execution and forget to deal with the aftermath. Focus on controlling the array. Li Jinglong had already spun behind Hung Jun. All of the symbols were lined up, and the flow of energy was directed towards where Hung Jun was standing. After Hung Jun poured the power of the earth vein into each of the symbols, the array glowed brightly. The two of them had been shifted to the very center of the dragon melting pool. Countless Jiao flew towards them, trying to attack this array, but the waters of the pool swelled up around them, attacking any of the Jiao that got too close. The 6th month, summer of the 14th year of the Tianbao era. Mo-Rijin, Lu Su, Atai, and Turandak returned to West Lake, with the Crown Prince's envoy. Light shot out of the dragon subduing tower, shooting straight up into the sky for a full 9 days and nights. Li Longji sent out an imperial envoy to Yuzhu with an edict for Enlushan, but Enlushan killed the envoy. The 17th day of the 9th month, 14th year of the Tianbao era. The exorcism department returned to Chang'an again. Yang Qiuzhong returned to the imperial court. The 23rd day of the 10th month, 14th year of the Tianbao era. Enlushan of Yuzhu, along with the Luo, Shi, Khitan, Shiwei, and other tribes, declared war on Yang Qiuzhong. They claimed that there were evil Yao in the court who were controlling the emperor. In the dragon subduing tower, the array had been repaired. Li Jinglong dashed into it, and he and Hung Jun linked hands as they looked up simultaneously. At the top of the tower, Ashinakayang shouted, "Are you still not done?" Ashinakayang had already exhausted all his strength. A pair of fiery wings extended out from his back, keeping Qiu Yangtze and the array protected in the middle. Jiao souls came charging towards them from all directions, and the war god's fiery wings were already close to their limit. "Retreat!" Qiu Yangtze shouted. Barham's fiery wings drew back, and Qiu Yangtze rose into the air. He spun, sending talismans crackling with lightning flying in every direction, accompanied by Yeming's wild roar. Instantly, Yeming charged towards the sky with a long cry, before then turning and charging back down, colliding forcefully with the center of the platform. Qiu Yangtze flew back, leaping towards Ashinakayang, and he grabbed his wrist and pulled them both into a somersault. The floating platform shattered into pieces, which plummeted down towards the ground. Ashinakayang grabbed onto the side of the platform, and the two of them slid towards the end. The dragon kings on each level roared at once, and their voices shook the entire world. The light pillars on each level lined up, and Yeming, glowing with a brilliant light, burst through into the light pillar on the 8th level. Glowing motes of light exploded out from around him, and they drifted through the 8th level. In the blink of an eye, the dragon guard then charged into the 7th level, and the glowing motes of light formed a ring that gently drifted apart. The 6th level, the 5th level, level by level, wherever Yeming passed, the passageways were once again forcefully opened up. His ashes turned into a river of starlight that forced the rigid passage of time, via his dragon energy, through every level. They turned into a revolving galaxy, linking up the different layers like paths of light through the galaxy. The 2nd level, then the abyss. The roar of a dragon approached them. Li Jinglong and Hung Jun looked up at the same time, and Yeming's shining form lit up the entirety of the dark abyss as he arrived in front of them. "Go!" Yeming roared. Hung Jun saw nothing more than a flash in front of his eyes, and he immediately held on tightly to Li Jinglong. The two of them grabbed each other tightly as a whirlwind of energy rose from the ground, sending them right on up to the 2nd level. The 9th day of the 11th month, 14th year of the Tianbao era. In the name of concern for the danger the country was in, Enlushan raised an army in open rebellion. 200,000 soldiers marched westward, and the various provinces and counties of Hebei surrendered without a fight. In the Huaqing Palace on Mount Li, silk and bamboo drifted about, and the residents within continued living their dreamlike life. After receiving the military reports, Feng Changqing climbed up to the Huaqing Palace. The curtains to the great battle known to history as the Yangshi disturbances had formally risen. With a Wen, the passageway to the abyss below vanished. They entered the third level, both of them still hovering in the air. Hung Jun was almost sent flying out, but Li Jinglong turned and grabbed his wrist. The passageway to the second layer vanished. Layer after layer, the pillars of light once again winked out. They passed through countless clusters of shining stars as they continued to rise, and finally, they were forcefully spat out on the 9th level. With a loud shout, Hung Jun fell to the ground, slamming into Li Jinglong's chest. Li Jinglong let out a pu at that. The impact nearly broke his ribs, and he lay there for a long while, unable to get up. Each of the layers returned to their original positions. Chu Yangxi looked up to see that in the void above their heads, a river of stars revolved slowly. The sky formed a hemispherical dome above them, and the sight was as beautiful and magnificent as that of a spherical astrolabe. "Everyone, this is goodbye forever," Yeming's voice called out from far below. Deep in the abyss, there was a huge boom. The darkness came rushing forth, and the dragon god sank into the darkness for good. The thistles and thorns cleared away, and stones and bricks flew towards them, rebuilding the tower within the tower situated on the 9th floor. Under the light of that starry river above, it glowed with a colorful light. All of them lay at the foot of the tower, staring up at the starry sky above. They all let out a sigh of exhaustion. "So beautiful," Hung Jun murmured. This place had been a complete mess just a bit ago, but now that he looked at it again, it looked like a fairy realm. "Let's go. Let's get out of the tower first, then we can talk." Li Jinglong scrambled to his feet. Now was truly the time where every minute and every second counted. Chu Yangxi gasped out, "Let me rest for a bit first." "You can't rest any longer," Li Jinglong said. "Who knows what's happened outside since? Rest after we get out." Chu Yangxi managed to struggle to his feet, and he said, "Go up to the top of the tower. We'll leave from there." Ashinakayang said, "Finally, we can get out of this tower. I need to go drink some wine." Hung Jun thought to himself, "Thank the heavens and earth, I really don't want to stay in this prison any longer." Out loud he asked, "How long has it been?" Ashinakayang replied, "According to the reckoning of time in the human realm, it has been 7 days. Chu Yangxi said, "There was a mix-up when we were repairing the barrier, so it might have taken a little longer than what we predicted." "Hurry up and cast the spell," Li Jinglong said. "If it's winter outside when we get out, it'll be too cold. We didn't bring anything to wear." "Hurry up and cast the spell," the three of them shouted at Chu Yangxi in unison. "Stop dallying." Chu Yangxi managed to summon up the power to cast the spell, and blue light enveloped the three of them. With a weng, a blue pillar of light shot into the sky from the array outside the dragon subduing tower. The four of them were teleported back to reality. The 7th day of the 12th month, 14th year of the Tianbao era. Hangzhou, the Flowing Clouds Mountain Villa. So it was winter after all. Hung Jun exclaimed. It's been a whole half a year since then. A fine, light snow was falling from the sky. A cold wind blew past them, and the snowflakes danced through the air. It's been a whole year and a half, Chu Chu's voice remarked. Grandpa! Chu Yangxi shouted, overcome with emotion. You're still alive. Everyone. Upon seeing that the rest of the group was not there, Li Jinglong asked, didn't we agree that they would wait in the villa after a year passed? Where are they? Chu Chu said, Marquis of Yadan, would you like to hear the news now or in a bit? Li Jinglong was completely exhausted, and he sat down on the stairs leading down from the array. Elder Chu, let's hear the good news first. Chu Chu replied with, there is no good news, only bad news. Li Jinglong lifted his head and stared at Chu Chu. En Lushan has rebelled, Chu Chu explained. The drums of war, beating in Yuyang, shook the earth, breaking the spell of the Song of White Feathers. One shishan later, Li Jinglong and the rest of them had all bathed and freshened up. Qiu Yangxi had used up too much mana, and he was sleeping inside. Ashina Qian, drying his hair, came to join Li Jinglong and Hung Jun in looking over the large amount of messages strewn across the table. These were the urgent messages that the members of the exorcism department had sent from all directions, from the 7th month of the year before to the 11th month of this year. Within was recorded the entirety of how the situation in the north had changed in this year and a half. 17 months, Li Jinglong murmured. And An Lushan bet all that he had on this single attempt. As of now, the entirety of the Hebei region has surrendered, Qiu said, stroking his beard. The troops that An Lushan has sent out are an allied force composed of Tang soldiers and soldiers from the various tribes to the north. As of now, no Yao tribes have marched out to battle yet. Smart, Li Jinglong said. As soon as any Yao appeared, they would draw the exorcists to them, so instead, An Lushan hid behind the army, refusing to do battle, while his mortal commanders led the Tang troops and the Tang armies under their command, and even the warriors of the various northern tribes, to do battle. With that, there was no way that Morrigan could turn into the Grey Wolf and rip and tear an army of mortals apart on the battlefield, and Atai could not cast any large-scale spells to bombard the enemy troops. Let me take a look at the map. The housekeeper spread the map out. Hung Jun asked, what if we circle behind them and deal with An Lushan? There's no rush, Li Jinglong said. As of now, An Lushan has just risen up in rebellion, and his defenses are heavy. Ambushing their rear is not the best method. We'll first head up north to Luoyang to reunite with Atai and the rest of them. Thank you for your hard work, Qiu said. As soon as you got out of the tower, you have to go rushing about once again. Li Jinglong sighed and smiled. I was destined to be a workaholic in this life, what can I do? After casting the spell for the array, Qiu Yangxi's vitality had been dealt a great blow, and he needed to rest and recover. Before Li Jinglong left, he went to take a look at him. He didn't know how serious his situation was, and he felt quite sorry. Just as he was about to say something, however, Qiu Yangxi interrupted him. You did the right thing. Thankfully we came out as soon as we could. If we stayed in there for a half a day longer, Luoyang might have been wiped off the map. Rest well at home. Li Jinglong searched his thoughts. Qiu Yangxi's real mission was to deal with Xiaoyu, but as of now, Yang Kuozhong had returned to Chang'an, and his situation was unclear. They truly needed Qiu Yangxi to rest up, so that he could come back at full health. Once I'm rested up a bit, I'll head up to Guangzhou to meet up with you all, Qiu Yangxi said. Li Jinglong made his preparations, and that very night, Qiu sent a servant to arrange for a fast boat to take them north along the canal. After they got onto the boat, the three of them let out a breath in relief. Finally, they had the chance to rest. Hung Jun looked through the letters one by one. In the reports that Morrigan had sent along, several of them had been written by Lu Su, and the scene of Morrigan teaching Lu Su how to write appeared in his mind. It had been over a year since they had last seen each other. Though it had only been a short few days for Hung Jun, he missed the rest of them greatly, and as for Lu Su, Atai, and the rest of them who had been separated from them for so long, they must miss them even more. Deep into the night, everything had fallen quiet. Hung Jun sat slumped on the table, watching Li Jinglong as he carefully read through every report. Hung Jun asked, "Are we going to war?" "We're not," Li Jinglong said. "We are exorcists. We only defeat Yao and devils. We aren't allowed to participate in wars, unless An Lushan sends out Yao Guai to kill humans." "Why does such an odd saying exist?" Hung Jun asked. "Was it a rule that De Renja left behind?" "Duke De left that," Li Jinglong sighed, before continuing. "The Kun God also reminded me of the same thing. If we were to participate in this battle of mortals as exorcists, this battle would become a massacre instead, and that will be in defiance of the natural order of the world. Everything in this world has a destined lifespan, which cannot be altered. Hung Jun nodded at that. Li Jinglong said, Mo Rijin mentioned that there's possibly a spy for our side in Lushan's headquarters. Who do you think it could be? Hung Jun frowned, and shook his head. He couldn't figure it out. Mo Rijin didn't mention any details or names. Li Jinglong guessed that it might be the Carpiao Zhao Zilong, but he couldn't say so for sure. He also knew that the reason Mo Rijin had deliberately brought it up in such a manner was because he didn't want Li Jinglong to use this as the crux on which their victory or defeat depended, so he had no choice but to let that be. You sleep first, Ba, Li Jinglong said, upon seeing Hung Jun yawn. I have some other things to do. N. Hung Jun slumped on the table, smiling as he watched him. He thought of before, when the two of them had headed up towards Dunhuang, in the north of the desert, how in Jingzhou City, as the wind whistled loudly, Li Jinglong would write a letter every night, so he told Hung Jun to sleep first. I'll keep you company, Hung Jun replied. Li Jinglong stroked Hung Jun's head. Not long after, Hung Jun found that he could not win out against his sleepiness. After all, the time he had spent in the tower was truly taxing, and soon, he drifted off into sleep. On that wintry night, a chilly wind gusted across the Grand Canal, as if countless ghostly souls were wailing as they circled around the boat. Hung Jun was sound asleep, and Li Jinglong picked him up and tucked him into bed. He pressed a gentle kiss to his lips, before wrapping his robes around himself and sitting down by the side of the bed. He opened up an analysis of the mountains and gullies around Luoyang, and began to match them up with the military reports. At this moment, Guo Ziyi had already been swiftly appointed the Jidushi of the North, and he was currently gathering the troops of the North, which would circle around east and meet Lushan's forces in battle. Feng Changqing had been recommissioned by Li Longji, and he had been appointed the Jidushi of Fanyang, which was Lushan's original post. He was in charge of directing the troops of Chang'an and Luoyang to set up a defense. Geshuhan had mobilized the Liangzhou troops to prevent the Tuzhou from attacking them from behind, thus trapping them in a pincer formation, and he was to bolster the ranks of the Liangzhou forces in charge of defending the emperor. If Li Jinglong had to guess at how this battle would play out, with Feng Changqing and Guo Ziyi working together to fight Lushan, he figured that they would not lose. The letter that Feng Changqing had sent to Hangzhou requested him to head to Luoyang instead of heading along the sea roads towards Yuzhou to ambush Lushan. After all, since Lushan had dared to raise an army, he must have made adequate preparations, and was probably waiting for Li Jinglong to throw himself headfirst into the trap. The vanguard commander of Lushan's army was Shi Siming, and in terms of waging war, Shi Siming was no match for the seasoned veterans Guo Ziyi and Feng Changqing. Lushan had to show himself sooner or later, and as soon as he left Fanyang and headed south, that would be an excellent opportunity to ambush him. But for the 6 artifacts of Akalanatha, which he had originally thought would be his, to not recognize their owner caused Li Jinglong to feel a great deal of dejection. However, just like that night they had ambushed Xiaoyu, as long as they made their arrangements in advance, depending solely on the heart lamp to purify what little devil qi Lushan had remaining would probably not be too difficult. Hung Jun was already fast asleep, so Li Jinglong pulled out the Yao binding cord from their bags, and he unfolded it and placed it on the table. For a time, he fell completely silent. In the dark night, the world was pitch black, and flocks of birds flew towards the peak of the Taihang Mountains. In dense swarms they came, filling the sky above. On this night, the entirety of the Taihang Mountains was covered with flocks of birds. They stood on the roof of the palace, in the corridors, out on the mountain, and in the forest. All of them were looking up towards the highest point. Chongming stood on the tall platform, looking off into the east. Qingxiang slowly walked towards him from behind. "This is all that I could summon," Qingxiang said. "There's still not enough," Chongming replied coldly. The Kun god sat on the shore of the pool, one of his hands sunk into the icy waters. He murmured, they must have already exited the dragon-subduing tower. Li Jinglong should be heading north to Luoyang now. You're depending on that mortal. Chongming's voice was filled with derision. Qing Xiang replied, who knows? The power of mortals may be the only thing able to break through this predestined fate. Chongming said, I will not place my hopes on that mortal. The time is near, Kun God. I imagine you are already able to see the not too distant future. I see slaughter, fresh blood, and devil qi, the Kun God said, sighing. You are correct, Chongming. Everything that we have done, all this effort that we have put in, has been nothing more than an attempt at self-delusion. Fate is unchangeable, and everything will progress towards that already predestined future. End chapter.